Hey everyone, my name is Jessie. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am talking about my least favorite book tropes. So in my previous video, I talked about my favorite tropes. I got to gush about some of the books that do these tropes extremely well. And today we're going to be talking about the opposite, the book tropes that I just really don't like. And granted, there are always going to be exceptions to all of these tropes where a book can do one of these tropes extremely well and I'll end up really enjoying it. But typically, more commonly, when I see these tropes in books, I get a little sense of dread because I'm like, oh, I just can't stand this. So here we go. Let's talk about those now. First trope I have to talk about, let's just start it off real controversial. I feel like this is a popular one. The secret heir. First of all, I'm not the biggest fan of royalty in my books. I just don't care typically about the inner workings of the palace and the kings and queens and all this stuff. In every book I've read with the secret heir, the person who had no idea that they were the real king or queen or the princess or the prince to this magical land, I have not liked it. This is very common, I feel like, in these classic fairy tale type books, or even more common in young adult books where we have the secret heir. And the problem with it is once it's introduced as the big reveal that this person is meant to be the king or queen or the prince or princess, I typically can predict where the story is going to go from there. It typically follows very similar beats to other books I've read. I think the only exception I can think of is Throne of Glass, and even that one is not quite what I'm talking about because a character who is the heir knows that they're the heir, but none of the other characters around them. So it's more of like when the main character themselves doesn't know and then someone comes in and is like, hey, did you know that you're princess da-da-da-da and you're gonna be the queen, but the evil queen who's ruling right now is the one we have to overthrow? And the person's like, oh my gosh, I'm a princess, I never knew. Yeah, that I don't like. Let me know if you think of a book that does this really well, and maybe I'll give it a chance. But so far, I haven't found one. Another trope that I'm not a huge fan of is the evil overlord. One evil thing, god, king, whatever it might be, who's evil because they want to be evil. I need a more compelling villain. I really, really like compelling villains. It's one of my favorite things that I find in fantasy. But there are exceptions to this, of course, because I don't have to love the villain to love the rest of the story. So books like, again, like Stormlight Archive and Mistborn have this kind of like evil overlord that you don't really have a ton of depth on. But the rest of the story surrounding that is so good and compelling and has so many of these elements that I love that I can look past that. I don't have to love the villain to love that story. Even Lord of the Rings has this, right? So there are exceptions to this, but if you're gonna have a villain and they have a lot of depth and they're evil for a very compelling reason where you're like, whoa, I don't like how you're going about this, but I can see why you think the things you do, that's so much more interesting to me. Lightbringer by Brent Weeks, that series has this where the villain is talking and you're like, well, I see what they're like I know what they mean, like I can see where they're coming from. I don't agree with how they're going about things, but like I can kind of like sympathize with their cause. So those sorts of things where you're like, well crap, I'm kind of questioning my loyalty here. I think that's really interesting. Even A Darker Shade of Magic, that V.E. Schwab series, I remember having something similar to that. But yeah, the more compelling your villain, the more I like that villain and the more they stick out in my mind. Another trope that I can't stand, I'm so sick of it, is the reluctant hero. The person who is the chosen one or who has the ability to take in all of this power and they're like, no, I just want to live a normal life. I don't want to be chosen. I don't want to have the power. No, no one would think like that. You're telling me that if some wise old wizard came up to me on the street and said, hey, You are the chosen one and you have all of this power. Let me teach you how to use it. I would not be like, no thanks, I'm gonna go about living my normal life now. I'd be like, hell yeah, give me the power. I wanna be the most powerful. That's awesome. I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm the chosen one. This is sweet. Granted, there's lots of, complications that come with that and obstacles and all this stuff, but I want more heroes that are like excited and like, yes, I'm the hero. Yes, I want to take the power, rather than being like, no, I don't want it. Like, yes you do. Yes you do. Everybody wants to be special. Are you kidding? You have the chance to be super special and you're just gonna be like, no, I just want to be normal. No, I don't like it. Other people might like it. And if you do, that's fine. But I just want more heroes that are like, yes, I can do it. Again, if this is in a book, it's not gonna like completely ruin the book for me. This has been done well in other books, but I just want to see more heroes excited about their powers. That's all. All right, another trope that I can't stand, that I don't know that anyone likes this. It's the lucky novice. It's the Mary Sue. It's the person who is the newcomer, is the one who is, just starting out, just starting their training, and all of a sudden they're super lucky and they can do everything right away, or they're just like the best right away. No one likes this. Everybody wants that to be earned, right? Like, don't you want it to be earned? I want it to be earned in a compelling, realistic way. I don't want our characters to just automatically be the best at everything they do. Again, it doesn't necessarily make me hate the book if we do have a protagonist who is inherently just really good at things and it just picks up things a lot faster. Rin from The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, she kind of has this a little bit where she's very new to training and dueling and all this stuff, and she's like beating everyone who's been training all their lives, but I still love that book. So it's not like I hate the book if it's in it, but I just prefer to see more earned power. That's what's really exciting to me, and to feel like they can fail. I think that's the biggest thing, is if you feel like a character is always going to excel and succeed no matter what because they're just the best, then it's like I don't fear for them because I haven't seen them fail, or I haven't seen them have that big soul-crushing moment. Characters like Rin have these moments of defeat where you can feel that they're at their lowest. So that's, if a character is like the lucky novice, but you still at least see them fail, I think then that's okay. Another book that comes to mind is Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. Nona is definitely a character that kind of reminds me of the lucky novice, but she has huge moments of failure and defeat and has to kind of rise up again. So I think those types of stories are okay. It's when the character just constantly wins no matter what. That's annoying. I want to see more struggle. I want to see more of the failing and having to rise up again. Yes. The next trope that I'm a little tired of, and this is going to sound so hypocritical because one of my favorite series has this. It's the powerful artifact. And Lord of the Rings is like the classic story that has this, but I feel like Lord of the Rings was like one of those first series to have the powerful artifact, so then everything else that came out after that was so inspired by Lord of the Rings that the powerful artifact started becoming overused because of that. So again, if this is in a book, it's not going to make me automatically hate it. Some of my favorites have powerful artifacts, including Foundry Side, but it is a little bit less fun when the solution to every problem is either destroying the powerful artifact or getting it for yourself and utilizing it. I don't know, there's something about that being the sole thing that drives the story that just is a little predictable, because like it's gonna get destroyed. Like it has to get destroyed, right? So the powerful artifact, it's not my favorite, but I do love some of the books that have this trope in it. I can just see how, because Lord of the Rings did it so well, so many stories that came after followed that trend, and it's become an overused trope, I would say. Another trope that I'm not a huge fan of, because I had the opposite trope in my favorites, and that is the trope of black and white morality. So Alan, I'm looking at you because I know that you love this trope. I actually had the anti-hero trope on my favorites list, and black and white morality I feel like is kind of the opposite of that, where it's the heroes are heroic and that's all they are. They're heroes and they just are righteous and can do no wrong, and the villains are villains. Black and white, there's no in between. They're good and they're evil. Now again, there are books that do this well. There are books where your characters are just solely good and righteous and you're just like, yes, that is my hero. And the villains are bad and you know who you root for. But I really do love exploring more of the middle stuff, where your good characters could do something really bad or your bad characters could do something really good. And it kind of makes you rethink, like, who's in the right here? Who do I trust? I love that kind of stuff that kind of makes me question whether or not these characters are making the right choices, and therefore they're questioning it themselves. I think that's more interesting to examine rather than just like black and white, here's your roles, here's who you root for, end of story. Another trope to talk about is, again, this is so hypocritical because there's so many stories I love that have this. It is the quest trope. I've just noticed that I've read a lot of these books at this point where our main characters have to go on this epic quest to get whatever thing. And typically when I read the quest stories, the parts in between where they start and where they end up are usually, like, for me, it often comes across as filler, where it's not exciting, there's no twists and turns, and it's just like this straightforward journey. And I find that I'm starting to really appreciate different types of stories that aren't solely the quest story. Now I know Lord of the Rings, I promise I love Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings, Frodo and Sam are on a quest, like that's their whole story. But there's so much else going on while that quest is happening that make the story so much more than just a quest that I love it. I love that story, and the characters are just incredible. But other books that have these quests to get to this one thing that you have to accomplish and that's it, I've started to really not enjoy as much. One that comes to mind that kind of really made me think of this one was the book Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. It starts off so interesting as like this Mulan Project Runway inspired fantasy in this like Chinese inspired world. But then like the second half of the book is just like all quest. And it was like so boring to read about this quest. I just didn't care. I didn't care at all. So I think that's where I really realized, I think I'm tired of the quest. I think I'm done. I think I'm done reading about just the straightforward quest story with your little stops on the way. And yeah, I'm just over it, I think. And then the last trope I have for this video is going to be the absent parents. This is definitely more common in middle grade and YA, I think, where you have like teenage characters or really young characters who are just on their own, no parental supervision, no parents helping out, and they're just gonna go save the day on their own, or they're orphans, or whatever the case may be, where that parents are just not a thing. You don't have to worry about the parents checking in on you to make sure everything's okay. Nope, we're just gonna ignore them entirely. I think as I've gotten older, I've started to appreciate that a lot less, because I've started noticing that books that have parents in them are so good. Books like Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, which is one of my favorites, has a mother character that adds so much to the story. That could have so easily been a story about these kids who are trying to figure out what's going on in their town and totally leave their parents out of it. Because, I mean, it was starting to lean that way, but then the little boy involves his mother. And when he involves his mother, she will do anything for her child. And to see that parent's love for that child, where they will do anything, they will conquer all for their child. I love that stuff. So I want to see more awesome parents. I know Jessie from The Bookish Mom is doing a whole thing, a whole journey where she is trying to find the most badass moms in fantasy, and I can't wait to see what she finds, because I agree. I think we need more badass moms or dads or just parents or just parental type figures who are just badass and awesome and will do anything for their kids. I love that stuff. I love it. So I want more of that and less of the absent parents. And I think that's changed, you know, as you get older. I think that changes, because as a kid, I didn't care about the parents in the story. But now I'm like, oh, I'm kind of getting close to like parent age. I want to see more awesome parents. So that's where that comes from, I think. So that's all I've got for you today. What is your least favorite book trope? Leave those comments down below. I would love to know. I love chatting with you guys about books. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and until next time, bye!